We said that there were a number of problems associated with national scale adoption of climate smart agriculture, including incomplete articulation of a truly comprehensive climate smart agriculture, a unidimensional design and implementation and evaluation framework, no prioritizing tool against greenwashing, and we spent some time on greenwashing yesterday, the loss of mitigative contributions from CSA towards the nationally determined contributions, which we also discussed yesterday, and the fact that there's no locally verifiable eco-linked quality labeling standard that came up as well. I went on to hint that the solution to those issues could be found in this CSAC, the Climate Smart Agriculture Compliant tool, which is an auditing, training, and even a self-certification, a self-evaluation tool that farmers can use. And we had comments from a farmer in the audience, as an attendee, who verified that you can in fact use it as a self-assessment tool. So let me just spend a little time talking about what this CSAC thing entails. So climate smart agriculture by definition is meant to improve food security, and I've underlined some of these issues. To improve food security and agricultural productivity, increase the resilience of farming systems to climate change by adaptation, whilst capturing potential mitigation co-benefits. So what CSAC does, it separates climate smart agriculture, if you like, into 5 operational arms. So we talk about resource conservation in terms of adaptation, energy use, which has a mitigation and agricultural productivity components. We talk about safety, which involves food security primarily, biodiversity support as a means of adaptation and food security preservation as well, and greenhouse gas reduction, which is purely mitigative. Under the rubric of resource conservation, the Climate Smart Compliant tool looks at land use, water use, nutrients use, including the source of those nutrients, whether they're from fossil fuel based, etc. Labor, how labor is being used, the energy consumption in labor. We look at energy use as a separate subcomponent where we look at power. Where's the power used on the farm coming from? What's the source of lighting? Input manufacture. So you might be using agrochemicals and so that have been produced from non-renewable sources, and we factor that in as well. Your transportation on farm and in terms of deliveries. In terms of safety, we look at production operations, harvesting, storage, and utilization. And with regard to biodiversity support, we look at your land clearing methods, what type of offsite agrochemical impact there is, the limit, how are you limiting the introduction of invasive species or the proliferation of invasive species? Have you fiddled with ecosystem services impact in the sense that have you interrupted some of the either water catchment or other biodiversity linked issues or support mechanisms within the environment? Greenhouse gas reduction. What level of enteric fermentation is associated with your project? Whether you have ruminants on site or not, what are you doing with the manure and the organic fertilizers that you have procured or produced on farm? What happens in terms of your soil management? How have you maintained that carbon and nitrogen balance in the soil so that you have not added undue amounts of greenhouse gases? Fossil fuel use, which is fairly straightforward. And then we look at manure and waste management. So although we looked at enteric fermentation in the case of livestock projects, and I know that it came up yesterday, but this CSAC tool has a special categorization that can handle livestock projects or mixed projects, and how you dispose of your waste, whether you have generated waste at all. Because in a truly climate smart operation, the waste should be at a minimum, because your waste is really a byproduct. It's either going to be used to incorporate into your composting and your soil incorporation, etc. Now, I've literally raced through this because, as we discussed yesterday, we are not about just the sharing of information. That can be done in any webinar setting. You can do that at home by yourself. What we are attempting to do here is to provide information that you will then interrogate during the question and answer session. And we really develop that nexus between information and knowledge, as we discussed yesterday. So we know that there's some data out there. We are providing you with bits of information. When we interrogate that information together, hopefully we'll be able to add to your knowledge portfolio. And with that understanding, you would make wise decisions on your farm or as regards policy, etc. So as I said, I'm racing through to be sure that I do not exceed the 20 minutes and that I do in fact give you enough time to interrogate the information that I'm sharing. Now, these slides and a lot of the background material will be shared with all attendees, and you have over the course of the next 5 weeks for us to thoroughly interrogate this information. But as an introduction, as an introductory phase of it, I wanted to just lay it out bare, literally, and have you interrogate it either starting today and continuing for the next 4 weeks. Now, I kept mentioning that this is a self-assessment tool as well as an auditing tool. There's an app that is being modified currently, but we are still using the Excel-based version of the app. What CSAC does is it literally asks 20 questions. In each of the 5 categories, there are 4 questions, which we have just run through the headings for those questions, the subcategories for those questions. If I were to discuss with you the background to the app, what happens behind the scenes in the app, if I use an Excel-based example, which I've done a screen capture here. So if you're looking at a CSAC assessment template for a predominantly cropping project, then when you look at the various categories of compliance that we're looking to evaluate, you're dealing with resource conservation, energy use, safety, biodiversity support, greenhouse gas reduction. In each of these categories, you have the 4 subcategories that I mentioned earlier. Now, at the core of CSAC is a numerical scale that you're going to equate to your qualitative and quantitative answers. So that points column there, I'm going to show you how we arrive at the particular points. Each subcategory has a maximum of 5 points. If you were to score at the highest level in all of those categories and end up with a score of 100, then you're talking about a level 5 in terms of the degree of compliance that can be ascribed to your climate smart agriculture project. Now, when I say it's an auditing tool, one can, with proper assessment, then compare competing projects in terms of how closely they comply with what would be seen as an ideal climate smart agriculture project that is comprehensive, that is not meant to be part of any greenwashing exercise, that is not singly focused on one aspect. And I think yesterday we beat the example to death about safe driving. In the same way that you cannot just improve one of your driving practices, you may improve the brakes that you're using on the car. But if you continue to drive in the same reckless manner, you can't see that you are now a certified safe driver because you just implemented one aspect of it. This is a comprehensive approach to climate smart agriculture that we're discussing. And as I discussed yesterday, one of the reasons why climate smart agriculture has lost favor, especially in some of the financial institutions, is because of this hodgepodge, unidimensional approach that we have taken to some of the climate smart agriculture projects. And this, what CSAC is meant to do, and which is what I'm introducing now, and it will be the theme throughout the 5 weeks, is this comprehensive approach to it. And how do you measure how comprehensive it is? By looking at the type of assigned points that a project, a product, or a process can amass if subjected to this type of interrogation, this type of analysis. So that the level one would be 40 to 50 points, because what it says is that if you cannot score 40 points on this scale, you really do not have a climate smart agriculture project. If you have consistently attained less than 2 marks in each of these categories, and your cumulative score is 40 or less, then really, by this rubric, you're not really participating in a climate smart agriculture project. And then we have gradations that go on from 2 to 3 to level 2 to 3 to 4 to 5. 5 will be 80 to 100. As I said, I'm rushing through it just so that you get a flavor for it. And when we get to the question and answer session, after Christian has done his presentation, then we'll be able to get into the details. But this is what happens at the back of the app. So the Excel-based version of the app quite simply just gives you a scale, a rating scale, a mechanism to quantitatively address what aspect of the subcategory you're looking at. I think what I've done here in the screen capture is to look at nutrients, and what would happen in the background of the app is that you will be provided with a possible rating scale. So if for the entire project, you're only using inorganic fertilizers, as you see there under 1, then that would be the points ascribed to that project. And you go on varying degrees of complexity and compliance all the way up to what you would offer 5 marks for. So that if one was to comply, literally comply with the ideal or close to ideal situation for each of these subcategories, then one would end up with a perfect score of 100, which has so far been unattainable. This app has been in use for the last 4 years, and the closest we have come to a completely climate smart agriculture compliant project was my analysis of Kent Farms in Trinidad. For those of you based in Trinidad, we know Kent Farms is an aquaponics project, well, not a project, a producing farm. And that was the closest we ever got to a level 5, a top scale level 5 compliance in climate smart agriculture analysis using this system. Other systems have come pretty close. I mean, a level 3 compliance is really, really spectacular. So, you know, we ought not to snub a level 3, but if you can't at least attain level 1, then in our opinion, your project is not really climate smart. And as I said, this is a tool that farmers have used on their farms, right? You can do this self-analysis, but in terms of the auditing, if it's going to be audited for some of the projects that we're rolling out now, where we're going to have differential pricing based on the CSA quality auditing, then clearly that would have to be done by an independent assessor. Because I mean, in a situation like that, you wouldn't want to literally trust the producer to, you know, give himself a rating of 5 for power use, a rating of 5 for transportation, etc., which cannot be then verified. So the auditing end of it requires that kind of external input, but as a self-assessment tool for you to realize where you stand in the general flow of things, then as a handheld mobile app, you could stay on your farm and, you know, having access to the information, just go through and rate yourself. And then rate yourself the next crop and see if you've been making any kinds of improvements, and see if you can tie that, to show that you can tie that to increase productivity, which is one of the outcomes that we're looking for when we talk about climate smart agriculture. So as I said, I want just to give you a little teaser, literally, and we will have the next couple of weeks to really interrogate this information in detail. I thank you very much for your attention. Over to you, Greg.
Thank you, Steve, for the presentation. Let me just remind those who joined us late that each presenter, Steve is going first, will present for 20 minutes. And then on completion of the presentations, we will have the question and answer session. So let me introduce